This lesson is going to cover three topics: ordering numbers, opposites, and absolute values. We'll start with ordering numbers. There are three symbols that we use to put numbers in order: less than, greater than, and equal to. The one thing you have to be careful when you're putting numbers in order is that you're comparing numbers that are in the same form. So for example, if you're looking at a list of numbers that have fractions and decimals, it might be a good idea either to put them all in fraction form or all in decimal form. Likewise, when you're dealing with a list of numbers that has positives and negatives, remember that the further left you move on a number line, the smaller the value of the number. For example, negative 20 is less than negative 10. You would write that as negative 20 less than negative 10. The following examples, we're going to take a list of numbers and just put them in order from least to greatest. So I'm going to start with this list of decimals. And it's kind of tricky because they're all positives and negatives, and a lot of them start with 2. So we want to look for the negative numbers first. And in those negative numbers, we want to think about which negative number would be the furthest to the left. For this list, we're looking at negative 2.1. As I finish, I'm just going to cross it off so that it doesn't get as confusing for me which ones I need to look at yet. Next would be negative 2.052, followed by negative 2.01, followed by negative 2.005. And I'm just going to zip through here and cross off the ones that I've used. And if you want, you can put commas between those. It's kind of your choice. It's a nice way to separate it. Negative 2 looks like it's going to be the next number. I'll cross that off. And now I'm into the positives. So it'll be 2.1 and 2.52. The next list is a little bit tricky because it's got fractions and decimals. So the first thing I'm going to do is convert all of these fractions to decimals. To do that, you take your calculator and you type in 3 divided by 8. That's going to give you 0.375 as a decimal. Most of you know that 1/2 is 0.5. If you do 5/9, that would give you 0.5 repeating, which we talked about the other day. You just use a bar above the 5 to show that that goes on. 0.6 is already in decimal form. 1/4 would be 0.25. And then 0.44 is already in decimal form. So by looking at all these numbers in the same form, it's a lot easier to figure out what order they should go in. So it looks like 0.25 is the smallest, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to write it in the original form that was in the list. So even though I looked at 0.25, I'm going to go back and write 1/4. Cross that off because I'm done with it. Next is going to be 3/8, followed by 0.44. Now we've got 0.5 and we've got 0.5 repeating. You could think of 0.5 as 0.50, and 0.55 would obviously be in a similar representation as 0.5 repeating, so we can see that 0.5 is smaller, so 1/2 would be next, followed by 5/9, and then 0.6 rounding out the list. The next topic is opposites. This one I think you can kind of use your common sense on. The definition is listed there. Two numbers that are the same distance but on different sides of 0. So for example, 1 and negative 1 are considered opposites. Some quick examples. The opposite of 18 is negative 18. The opposite of negative 5 is 5. And the opposite of 0 is 0. 0 is the only number that is its own opposite. The last topic is absolute value. This one's tricky for a lot of students. We're talking about distance that a number is from 0 on a number line. And because we're talking about distance, absolute value is always a positive quantity. The symbol that we use for absolute value are just some double bars. You can see below, I have an example here, negative, or the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The reason is because if you look at negative 3, it is 1, 2, 3 units from 0 on the number line. And because, again, we're talking distance, it's always positive. A few examples to illustrate absolute value. The absolute value of negative 2 is 2, because we're talking 2 units from 0 on the number line. here, we actually have something that we have to do first. I can't just start taking the absolute value of -3 and -7. What I have to do first is actually complete the operation in here. And we know that -3 take away 7 gives us a -10. From there, we do the absolute value, which is 10. And on here, we're looking at 0 again. And 0 is, again, its own absolute value.